Hello, a very good evening. Welcome to News Focus tonight. We are live across all our social media handles on MBN 360. Like our pages, share with your friends and loved ones. As we go into tonight, we look at the big stories that has spearheaded the day, the big story that is making headline. The banter is still on. So I want to say a very good evening and welcome to the News Focus on MBN TV. I am El Samuels, and tonight Ghana's economic management takes a center stage as a heated debate over the financial implication of the domestic gold purchase program and gold board intensify. The International Monetary Fund assessment of the losses associated with the program has triggered a political and economic debate, with the minority questioning government handling of the initiative, while the gold board leadership insists the figures are being misinterpreted. Economist Professor Godfred Pokin, however, says the debate must go beyond political argument, stressing that transaction costs are still costs and must be properly accounted for. And tonight, we ask the big question: is Gold Board delivering economic value to Ghana, or are taxpayers ultimately carrying the costs of the program? We will examine the numbers, the politics, and importantly, what should happen next. But first, here are the major stories making news tonight. The controversy over the financial performance of Gold Board has intensified with conflicting interpretation of the IMF assessment of Ghana's domestic purchase program. Gold Board CEO Sami Jamfi says the IMF did not attribute the reported 1.7 billion US dollars loss directly to Gold Board, arguing that the losses related to the earlier domestic gold purchase program. He says Gold Board was established later to take over key functions. But critics insist the financial implications cannot simply be separated from the institution now responsible for the program. Another political argument continued. Economics are now turning attention to the actual cost of the program and whether Ghana is getting sufficient value for resources committed. The Supreme Court is expected to rule Friday on application challenging directive allowing selected judges to conduct criminal trials during the legal vacation. The application was filed by Ofuasi Ayuribi MP, Vincent Kojo Oppong Nkrumah, who is seeking to restrain the Chief Justice from enforcing the directive. The case has implications for the administration of justice and questions of whether criminal matters should continue during the legal vacation under the current arrangement. From the courtroom to the economy, concerns over Ghana's financial management continues to dominate the national conversation. Ghana continues to grapple with the consequences of years of fiscal pressure, debt accumulation, and the restructuring of public finance. The latest debate over Gold Board adds another layer to questions how government institutions manage public resources, particularly where programs involve the use of public funds and the balance sheet of the Bank of Ghana. Professor Pokin has warned that the continued use of the central bank for the quasi-physical activities could create further pressure on the institution and ultimately expose taxpayers to recapitalization costs. And while the economy remains under scrutiny, there was other development shaping the national conversation tonight. Ghana is mourning the death of a businessman and a media entrepreneur, Stephen Kwabena Boateng, popularly known as Kesben. The founder and the CEO of Kesben Group of Company died on Wednesday night, with news of his passing emerging today. His death has generated tributes across Ghana, particularly in the business and the media communities where he made a significant impact. Now to our major stories tonight. Our major story tonight is the Gold Board and the questions of losses. What exactly did the IMF report say? Who incurred the reported losses? Does the financial impact belong to the Bank of Ghana the Domestic Gold Purchase Program, or Gold Board? Perhaps, most importantly, can a program be economically beneficial to Ghana while simultaneously recording significant transaction-related costs? These are the questions at the heart of tonight's debate. The IMF assessment cited losses associated with the Domestic Gold Purchase Program, with a reported figure for 2025 reaching 1.7 billion, according to report on the debate. Gold Board CEO disputes the interpretation that Gold Board itself made the loss. Gold Board has also presented its own financial position, with the CEO saying the institution recorded 5.4 billion CD surplus, rejecting the minority's characterization of the IMF findings as a Gold Board loss. And that brings us to the important distinction. A loss in a particular program or transaction is not necessarily the same as the overall financial position of the institution operating the program. And that is where the debate becomes more technical. Professor Godfred Kpokin argues that the discussions must account for the full cost of the transaction. His central argument is straightforward. Transaction cost is a cost. In other words, even if a transaction generates benefit elsewhere in the economy, the cost incurred by the state cannot simply disappear from the financial analysis. His concerns go beyond Gold Board. He has questioned the systemic use of the Bank of Ghana's balance sheet for quasi-physical activities, warning that taxpayers could eventually be required to recapitalize the central bank. So the question for policymakers is not simple. Did Gold Board make losses? What did Ghana spend? What did Ghana receive? What economic benefit did the country obtain from the program? Now the political divide is there. The political positions are sharply different. The minority has interpreted the IMF findings as evidence of significant financial losses associated with the gold program. Government and Gold Board, however, rejected the characterization that the Gold Board incurred 1.7 billion US dollars. Sami says the IMF specifically referred the Domestic Gold Purchase Program, not Gold Board, and points to factors including service fees, discount, and foreign exchange valuation effects in explaining the reported losses. That means tonight's discussion must look at the political rhetoric from accounting technology. In our first item on the bill, the debate over the financial performance of the Gold Board. So we move straight away to take a listen. How much Ghana paid to achieve that objective, and whether the same outcome could have been achieved at a lower cost. The Gold Board CEO has rejected the figures. If the program generated wider economic benefit, do those benefits justify the costs incurred? If the transactions costs are indeed a cost to the state, who ultimately bears the costs? Gold Board, the Bank of Ghana, or the Ghanaian taxpayer? Tonight's News Focus, we examine the numbers, the competing interpretation, and the economic implication of the Gold Board controversy. Let's take a listen to Professor Kpokin.
Transaction cost is a cost. Mainline is a cost. The fact that it's associated with a transaction doesn't make it different, doesn't require its description differently. Let me put it that way. We need to understand that because there are different layers within this whole domestic gold purchase arrangements. So you have the miners, you have aggregators, you have Gold Board being the monosomy, then you have the BOG and all of that. When you are accounting for the cost of the intervention, you cannot just look at it in silos. You need to look at it comprehensively, right? So when you adopt that approach and you fully reflect the entire cost, transaction, whatever cost of obtaining funds, and all of that, then it gives you the perspective of what the actual cost of the intervention has been, and not just when you look at it from an isolated case or so. So it's a cost to us. And why is that important? Is that important because your accounting treatment will pick it up. Okay, and what you call transaction cost here, Bernard, remember that whilst it's a cost on the books of Bank of Ghana, the corresponding credit reflect gains in private off-takers or aggregators, or those who are off-takers in terms of exporting the gold and then having to convert the currency at a lower rate and the rest of them. So that is how you should look at it. So it's cost on one hand, but it represents transfers or gains to other players within that value chain. And that is what we need to appreciate when we adopt a value chain approach to all of this.
And so that's the voice of Professor Porkin. So is this really the story about Gold Board making a loss, or it is a story about the cost of pursuing Ghana's gold and foreign exchange objectives? And when public resources are involved, can a transaction cost simply be treated as part of doing business? Let's examine the facts tonight on the News Focus. You can share your thoughts with us on the numbers on the screen on 053-715-8638 via WhatsApp or SMS. Now, away from that, we hear the political battle over the reported losses associated with the Ghana's Gold for Reserves program has taken another 10. The NDC Hamza Soyini has challenged the minority leader, Ales Anafenyo-Markin, to point to where exactly the IMF report says Gold Board itself made the reported losses. So he says the minority is misinterpreting the IMF findings by presenting losses under the domestic gold purchase program as losses incurred directly by Gold Board. The minority, however, has maintained that Gold Board must account for the financial consequences of the program, arguing that the institution cannot claim the benefit of the gold trading operations whilst distancing itself from associated costs or losses. And this has created two competing narratives. On one side, the minority says the reported figures exposes serious financial losses and questions the sustainability of Gold Board's operations. On the other hand, government and its supporters insist the IMF report does not say Gold Board itself made a 1.7 billion loss, and that the figure relates to the broader domestic gold purchase program. The bigger question tonight, but beyond the political exchanges, there is an important accounting question. Who actually carried the loss? We'll be back and answer this after the break.
Okoba Edoba Pimsine herbal range of products. Yes, answer the via ba a gain malamas and no na yes ya. Samalaria natural nasa wankasa who say na fever at yes to swa. Edra ye can from mao actually say kind a gain range of products no ye a gain malamas ye dra ye do two malaria set at a shakra edia free peduanim and it is a wood ye nasa ohodo do wankasa eya na wodo wanumatu ontumi ndidi nasa ya na edra no pa na ya osawo yade ebedru awia no atiesie ebedru anwumre no nasa ohododo wo a conformance shop na herbal shop na ebe wo no okwa ka cho mo se o be test for malaria parasite no se o test na eba na ye positive a enhwe ba bia kwaje agai malamis no na ye nom amanatu malaria sikra edi afri nipaduanim sa water de do na wankasa nipaduanim no wo se ya na wafre o feel feverish kona kwaje agai malamis no nenom enne beboa etu malaria parasite na so kra ede afiri peduanim ede ama so wonu mato na so wontumi didi wontumi nye bo wontumi ntai bo wontumi ndi bo a eya agai malamis no na wonom ama na tu malaria ntidi yade na so kra afiri peduanim ede ama shene so ma yen say ya hospital ko teste anasa pharmacy ko teste se malaria mo wani wo mo janim ansana wafa agai malamis no yenom amana tu malaria sekura ede efri nipaduanim woni se malaria ba oso a eya na ma nipadua na kese eya na mo sori udua so na waye no fe ubewu na wuti edwa kakra na ahoyira ba oso na nipaduanim anyowo a kono koji agai malamis no e ka pensa range of products ne ho we no ye de ba betu malaria fever sekura ede efri nipaduanim enu ti edra ye kan form o se no de etu malaria sekura no eye agai malamis no ye bobobi ye nunumbi ye numa kopem se malaria sekura ebetu edi efri nipaduanim oni se malaria mo no mo ye mo bi obo ha adwe ye pa ena hwehwe so de ababetu dwa se malaria de ne ya de a eku nipa bebre afibia eya ne yabu ye ne aguso ye mpesa okra be firi wonsa enti de ye ka cho se wo wo ho na wuti paawo nipadua no wanka se wo sa wodo na wona mo nya wuyi a Bora pharmacy shop na herbal shop ebe wo okwa also ba be test se malaria mo wani bia ba mo jani mu a o test we na ba positive a enhwe ba bia kope agai malamis no eye malaria do tata hye a ye nom amana to sin yakọ nipaduanim akwakotu emo wana sekura ede efu wonu mato ontumi endidi eye na wo awota ade woni nyina eye nsensioni a edi adanse se malaria mo wano aba nipaduanim se ntontuma kawo ene wanya malaria dia ene kwaji agai malamis ne be neno ene ne malaria dura yesiesia eba beboa amanatu malaria na sekura ede efri nipaduanum enti se wutie yen na wo de ne malaria na wako teste ni akato se malaria na chewa enhwe ba bia kwaji agai malamis no ene na ye nom amanatu malaria na sekura ede efri ho ede ama obo se na wo no etaade de na de bia wa ye moso edwawia ni pie kakra na ase watie si eye oso yade ni wo na atu ayira na edru anwumra bo na ho pose cha kwara kwaji agai malamis no eye senchoni e de abobo se eye malaria mo wa no e na aba nipaduanim eno ti hwe ba bia onye ko pharmacy shop ni testo na ne ba se eye malaria nko a mo wa no e na aba nipaduanim mu a na waji agai malamis ne be e kan herbal products no ho onu ma beboa na etu malaria na sekura hye nso ma ye se Pemsign group of companies ye ni hospital bia ewo bebia a range of products no bibidro tata hye papa no edi aba no agai malamis ne kan ho no nko a e na sesi ano ya ewo herbal shop ene pharmacy shop tubo ra ho a ne malaria na waji agai malamis no na wanom ebeboa na pam malaria bia edi afini peduanim ede amount chene suma yesa abatan etumi enumedre bi sanso na nkwada wo munya emfie dumienu enso entumi ennom wanya emfie dumienu na oto adre bi na malaria wakotesti am ya ka kire wo a ene obehia tire so ho ne baako anapa ewia ene enumre na wanom wadi free du so kwa ubehia tire ne mienu anapa ewia enumre na wanom utobi nso ay numbers na good tv ne so no obetumi afre ye na wo so question bi a wo ede fa ye dre ho no ye beje so na ye ne wo edisa enkomo no ye ka se agai a ba bia wo bia na waje se etso se
Welcome back from the quick break. You're still live on the News Focus, live and direct from our studios on the 10th Avenue Extension, Greater Estate. The big question is, but beyond the political exchanges, there is an important accounting question. Who actually carried the loss? Was it the Bank of Ghana? Was it the Domestic Gold Purchase Program? Was it Gold Board? Or should the losses be viewed within the wider cost of Ghana's strategy in accumulating gold reserves and generating foreign exchange? And even if Gold Board did not technically incur the reported loss, who ultimately bears the financial burden when a state program loses money? Tonight, we therefore have two very different interpretations of the same set of figures. The minority says Gold Board must account for the losses. Soyini says IMF report does not accuse Gold Board of making those losses. So, where exactly is the truth? In the accounting terminology or in the economic reality, we examine the next on News Focus. Now let's take a listen to Hamza Soyini.
If there's any person or political party that ought to be blamed for the shift in focus, concentration on numbers, and not the actual environmental cost of the report, and the cautious optimism expressed in the report, then it is Afenyo-Markin and the New Patriotic Party. And Dr. Zato must be bold to state that fact, regardless of his association with the NPP. That fact needs to be made. This debate was not started by the NDC. It was not started by Gold Board. It was not started by Bank of Ghana. The NPP, through Afenyo-Markin, read the document and decided that they were going to concentrate solely on the figures and not the environmental implications of our mining sector. A cautious optimism expressed by the Bank of Ghana, the IMF. So that is not the doing of the National Democratic Congress, and we have not compelled anybody to concentrate on just the figures. Now to the substantive issue before us today, and that has to do with the claims being made by, I don't want to believe it is the entirety of the New Patriotic Party, because I have friends in them. I have spoken to a number of them. And even they themselves has expressed concern about the modus operandi of their minority leader. Many of them think that this is personally driven with benefits they are still trying to understand, or the hope of benefits. Okay, if you look at the conduct of this micro-minority in Parliament, anytime there is a specific issue, their ranking address press conference on that specific issue. I'm not saying standard. I said address the press conference. Either from the military reverend, or when the budget is read, or even the annual statement of the Bank of Ghana was issued. Who read the press conference? They are ranking. So the strategy behind this particular press conference should tell you the personality nature of it, especially when an interview was granted and the chief executive officer of the Gold Board came to respond to the interview, and that informed the decision of the minority, especially Afenyo-Markin, to organize a press conference the following day in Parliament.
And as the Hamza Soyini, also a defending government position, where the party that criticized the NPP for making losses now made even more losses. The political battle over the financial implication of Ghana's gold buying program is deepening. NPP spokesperson Kofi Tonto has accused the governing NDC of repeating the very financial practice it previously criticized under the NPP. According to Mr. Tonto, the NDC formed Gold Board after accusing the previous administration of incompetence and financial mismanagement, but has now presided over what he describes as even greater losses. He argued that the Gold Board cannot be separated from the losses recorded by the Bank of Ghana because the institution operations are closely connected to the gold purchase program and the central bank's financial position. But the argument is being challenged by government-aligned voices who insist the reported losses attributed to the domestic gold purchase program should not automatically be described as losses made by Gold Board itself. That distinction is now at the center of the political and economic debate. The core issue, the question is no longer simply whether there were losses. It is who incurred those losses and who bears the financial burden. And if Gold Board's operations contributed to the Bank of Ghana losses, should Gold Board be held accountable even if the accounting treatment places the loss somewhere? Now let's take a watch and listen to Kofi Tonto.
The discussion is about accountability to the people. When we started the gold purchase program in the year 2024, according to the IMF, we made some losses. Our brothers on the other side took to the streets and pontificated that we cannot sell gold and make losses, that it is highly incompetent for a government to sell gold and make losses. That was the general argument. My brother Sami Gyamfi was one of the leading communicators, mounting platforms after platform to tell Ghanaians that the Akufo-Addo government has failed because it sold gold and made losses. That is the onset of the argument. They got the opportunity to govern and proceeded to build on the gold policy the NPP innovated or invented. This time, they passed a law which granted all powers in the gold value chain to Gold Board, from buying to selling to assaying to grading to weighing, everything to Gold Board. In fact, to the extent that no singular competitor can operate in the gold space. Gold Board is the only person that can buy gold in this country. Remember, in our time, there were competitors when the NPP was doing the gold for oil and the gold for reserve programs, and PMMC was buying gold. It was a liberal market. PMMC was just one of many buyers. But in this case, Gold Board is the only buyer. Now, Bank of Ghana is the financier. And Bank of Ghana advances 133 billion Ghana cedis. 133 billion Ghana cedis. Out of that amount, Gold Board went out to buy gold. So let's do a very simple analysis. Let's say Bank of Ghana gives Gold Board 133 billion Ghana cedis and says that bring me 100 tons of gold. Gold Board goes out and then it comes back to give Bank of Ghana 85 tons of gold. Essentially, about 15 tons of gold missing or made in losses. So then we are asking the question. In any case, before this whole conversation, when the initial IMF report came, there was this, we have not made losses, there's nothing like losses. Ultimately, they agreed. And then now the question is, who owns the losses? Who is responsible for the losses? When you read the statement the minority made, the minority talks about what the Bank of Ghana is responsible for and what the Gold Board is responsible for. The argument we are making is that Bank of Ghana advanced money to Gold Board to go and buy gold. Gold Board went to the market to buy gold and made losses. One, on the sense of FX. Bank of Ghana sets their rates, the forex rates, but when Gold Board goes to the market and they buy it from the market will not sell it at the Bank of Ghana rate. They will sell it at foreign forex rates and not the Bank of Ghana rate. So there is a differential. Very simple example. If Bank of Ghana sets the rate at 11 and Gold Board goes to the market, they will not sell the gold to Gold Board at 11. They will tell you that we will sell it at 13 or 13.5. So ab initio, there's a loss of 2 cedis or 2.5 cedis per transaction. So that is where one of the losses is coming from. The other loss is coming from what we call assaying fee. And then the other loss is coming from what we call service fee. And then the final loss is coming from what we call the discount fee. When Bank of Ghana goes to sell the gold to the off-taker, they give what we call discount to the off-taker. Combining all of these things together, there is a loss of 1.7 billion. Gold Board cannot take itself out of that engagement which led to the loss. Now we can have the argument on whose book the losses sit on.
So that's Kofi Tonto's position introducing a political accountability test. If the NDC criticized the previous administration for financial losses and presented Gold Board as part of a better economic strategy, then the government must demonstrate that the new model is financially sustainable. But government also has a responsibility to distinguish between an institution's own financial results and losses incurred within a broader program involving the central bank. That is why the accounting evidence matters. So on one side, the NPP says government cannot create Gold Board, benefit from its operation, and then distance itself from losses recorded by the Bank of Ghana. On the other side, government insists the reported losses cannot be labeled Gold Board losses. Tonight, we put both positions to test. What do the numbers actually tell us? Now, finally, before we go to the phone lines, for Ato Forson, the government has mounted a strong defense of the Gold Board, with the Finance Minister, Dr. Kessel Ato Forson, pointing to the gold buying initiative as a major contributor to Ghana's foreign exchange position. Presenting the 2026 mid-year budget review in Parliament on July 23rd, Dr. Forson said Gold Board has generated an additional $15 billion in foreign exchange inflows, significantly supporting the reserves accumulation and exchange state stability. He said the policy has also contributed to the formalization of the gold trade, reduced gold smuggling, and ensures that a greater share of Ghana's mineral wealth benefits the domestic economy. According to the Finance Minister, the intervention contributed to a major improvement in Ghana's external position, with the current account surplus rising from 1.9% of GDP in 2024 to 8.3% in 2025. Government argument, therefore, is that Gold Board should not be judged solely by individual transaction costs or isolated financial figures, but also by its wider contribution to foreign exchange accumulation, the CD, and Ghana's reserve. But this position now faces a fundamental test. But let's take a listen and watch the Finance Minister.
Mr. Speaker, the third key transformational policy reform was the introduction of a complementary fiscal policy to support inflation targeting, ensuring exchange rate stability, and building external resilience. Central to this reform was the establishment of the Ghana Gold Board to curb gold smuggling, formalize the gold trade, and ensure that a greater share of Ghana's mineral wealth benefits the Ghanaian people. Through this intervention, Ghana generated an additional $15 billion in foreign exchange inflows from gold, significantly strengthening reserve accumulation and supporting exchange rate stability. This single policy measure improved Ghana's current account balance by 6.4 percentage points from a surplus of 1.9% in 2024 to 8.3% in 2025. Mr. Speaker, this represents a 4 times increment of the current account surplus in just 1 calendar year. Mr. Speaker, this was not simply a gold policy. This was a macroeconomic stabilization policy designed to strengthen the city, build external buffers, and restore confidence in the Ghanaian economy. To reinforce these gains, government developed and is implementing the Ghana Accelerated National Reserve Accumulation Policy, GANRAP, with the objective of increasing Ghana's international reserve to the equivalent of 15 months of import cover by end of 2028.
And that is the voice of the Finance Minister. Now we go to the phone lines. I mean, you've listened to the arguments, you've listened to the banters, you've listened to the positions. Let me hear from you. The numbers on the screen, 0537158638, is 60 seconds when you call. Make it snappy, and 60 seconds your name, where you're reaching us from, put whatever you have for us, and drop. And make sure your CV volumes are lowered before you talk to us. We want to have the conversation with you on the phone, not on the TV. 053-715-8638 is the numbers. 053-715-8638. If you listen to the finance minister, the government argument, therefore, is that Gold Board should not be judged solely by individual transaction costs or isolated financial figures, but also by a wider contribution to foreign exchange accumulation, the cedi and the Ghana reserves. But that position now faces fundamental tests. If Gold Board generated billions of dollars in foreign exchange inflows, what was the cost of generating those inflows? And can the economic benefits claimed by government outweigh the transaction costs and losses being highlighted by its critics? There is, in essence, in the heart of tonight's Gold Board debate, government says the policy has brought billions of dollars into Ghana and strengthened our external position. Critics says the cost of achieving those gains cannot be ignored. So when we put the benefit on one side, the cost on the other, what does the balance sheet really tells us? That is where our analysis begins. 0537158638. Your numbers are also ubetumi and the attrition komo and the enumere. My mentor can enter the message media. I got 5 minutes with my viewers to send their contribution. Is a news focus tonight from our studios on the 10th Avenue Extension, Greater Estate, Nungwa Adogono. Economic game changer or costly experiment? That's the big questions that we asking. Gold Board, is it economic game changer or costly experiment? Do you believe Gold Board is benefiting Ghana despite the reported transaction costs and losses? Yes or no, and why? Professor Pokin says transaction cost is a cost. Soyini Hamza says, where is the abstract that it says Gold Board made losses? Whose argument makes more sense to you? 053-715-8638. If losses incurred under the domestic gold purchase program, but Gold Board is now managing the program, who should ultimately take the responsibility? Government says Gold Board has helped generate significant foreign exchange inflows and strengthen Ghana's reserves. Should economic benefit outweigh the financial losses if both are real? These are the questions we are asking. Kofi Tonto says the party has criticized the MPP for losses, has now made even bigger losses. Is this legitimate accountability or just political point scoring? 0537158638. 053. If you were the president, would you continue Gold Board in the current form, reform it, or scrap it altogether? Hello, good evening. Your name, where you calling from, within baby of Fresh? We can hardly hear you. Can you speak up a bit? I think we've lost him on the line. You can call back 053-715-8638. Please, I know quite line saying how. Oh no. 053-715-8638. Offer not what position. Hello, good evening. Good evening. Hello, good evening. I think we're having difficulties with the phones tonight. Got just some minutes more to go. You can still find your way through it. On 053-715-8638 is the numbers. 053-715-8638 is the numbers. You can also, let's hear you as we make way for the next set of programming. 0537158638. Ofra no watching with TV no and volume no and my feedbacks. It's my mental na men sorry Jumedi so check me call just go like some 4 minutes to wrap up tonight's edition of News Focus live and direct from our studio. Well, now let's do some fast check before I go. A Minority Caucus press conference accused the Ghana Gold Board of 22 billion in losses in 2025. Now, the Gold Board CEO Sammy Gyamfi calls it a barrett-faced lie, pointing to an audited surplus and no mention of Gold Board losses in the International Monetary Fund document. Research examined both the IMF reports cited and the Gold Board audited account line by line. Now, Minority claims misleading. Gold Board did not make a trading loss in 2025. Its own audited account showed a surplus, but the 22 billion figure the Minority cited is real and correctly quoted from the IMF. It is the Bank of Ghana's loss under the gold purchase program. Gold Board served only as a paid buying agent, not a loss on Gold Board own books. Claimed by Gold Board CEO. True, nowhere in either the IMF document, not in the 47 separate mentions of Gold Board loss across the 182-page staff report, and not in paragraph 13 itself does the IMF say Gold Board caused the loss and that the loss site sits on the Gold Board books. Ghana's Minority Caucus in Parliament, led by the Minority Leader Ales Anafenyo-Markin, publicly held a press conference on 18th of August accusing the Ghana Gold Board of losing 22 billion Ghana cedis plus in 1 year, a figure is said came directly from the International Monetary Fund. A day later, Gold Board Chief Executive appeared at the Government Accountability Series to reject the claim outright, describing it as a bare-faced lie and pointing to Gold Board's own audited 2025 financial statement, which recorded a surplus. Both cannot be right, or can they? The research obtained and read in full, the two IMF documents both sides have referenced, the SIT Review Staff Report, the IMF Country Report number 26212, and its companion selected issues paper, Country Report number 26213, Lessons from the Bank of Ghana's Domestic Gold Purchase Program, alongside the Gold Board's Auditor General certified 2025 accounts. And here is what they show. The claim, Gold Board loses 22 billion. At the press conference, the Minority Central figure was ambitious, a loss of 1.7 billion, or roughly 22 billion in 2025 alone, about 1.5% of Ghana's entire GDP. The head of an institution accused of losing 22 billion Ghana cedis plus in 1 year should not be taken about tone. He should be talking about his leisure. Minority Caucus press conference. The Minority, when quoting what is said, was paragraph 13 of the IMF report verbatim, that the loss was a combination of service, assay fees paid to Gold Board, discount on gold sold to off-takers, and most importantly, exchange rate losses from the spread between the Forex Bureau rate paid to the purchased gold and the CD references rate for the BOG. The research traced the exact quotation on the paragraph 13 of the IMF selected issues paper, Country Report 26/213, published in August 2026. It matches almost word for word. The paragraph reproduced below does not exit or does not say what the Minority quoted. It is saying the figures check out. The IMF confirmed domestic purchase losses rose from roughly 400 million in 2024 to 1.7 billion. And the companion report separately confirmed Ghana's central bank, the Bank of Ghana, ended 2025 with negative equity of 93.8 billion, or 6.7% of the GDP. So these are some of the findings that came out. We'll bring you some more on this as we unfold. My name is El Samuels. Do have a good night.